I'm reading from my book again today. This is the second of my 3 Christmas cards. Chapter 37. Directing willful joy to God in order to avoid errors and obstacles arising from images. 1. Images are notably beneficial both for remembering God and His saints and for moving the will to devotion if properly used. So too, they will be the cause of serious error if the soul is ignorant of the conduct proper for its journey to God when supernatural phenomena occur relative to these images. One of the means with which the devil readily captures incautious souls and impedes them in the way of spiritual truthfulness is the supernatural and extraordinary phenomena he manifests through images, either through the material and corporeal ones the church uses, or through those he fixes in the fantasy in the guise of a particular saint. He transforms himself into an angel of light so as to deceive. 2 Corinthians 11:14. Crafty one that he is, in order to catch us off guard, he will disguise himself in the very means we use to procure help for ourselves. In the use of good things, consequently, good souls should be more cautious, for evil in itself gives testimony to itself. 2. The harm that can affect the soul in these circumstances is as follows. Hindrance in its flight to God, an ignorance or poor attitude in its use of images, being deceived either naturally or supernaturally by them. These are subjects we dwell on earlier, so the soul may avoid all this harm, purify its will of the joy it finds in images, and direct itself through them to God, which is the intention of the Church in their use. I wish to set down only one maxim here, which will be sufficient for all cases. Since images serve as a motivating means toward invisible things, we should strive that the motivation, emotion, and joy of will derived from them be directed toward the living object they represent. The faithful should therefore take this precaution. On seeing the image, they should not allow their senses to become absorbed in it, whether it be corporeal or imaginary, of beautiful workmanship or richly adorned, the cause of sensible devotion or spiritual, nor if it make gestures through supernatural power. They should pay no attention to these accidents. They should not dwell on the image, but immediately raise the mind to what is represented. They should prayerfully and devoutly send to the satisfaction of joy of their will in God, or the saint being invoked, so the painting and senses will not absorb what belongs to both the spirit and the living person represented. They will accordingly be safe from delusion, since they will be paying no attention to what the image supernaturally says to them, nor will they be so employing their senses as to hinder the free elevation of these senses to God, nor be putting more trust in one image than in another. And the image that does excite their devotion will do this more copiously, since their affection will be immediately raised to God. Whenever God bestows these and other favours, he does so by inclining the movement of joy of the will toward the invisible, and he wishes us to do likewise by annihilating the strength and satisfaction of the faculties in regard to all sensory and visible objects. Chapter 38 continues the discussion of motivating goods, oratories and dedicated places of prayer. I think I have explained clearly how, in these accidental traits with regard to images, spiritual persons can have as much imperfection, and perhaps more if they look for their satisfaction and joy in them, as the use of other corporeal and temporal objects. And I add that perhaps these images are more dangerous, for in saying they are holy objects, these persons become more assured and do not fear natural possessiveness and attachment. Spiritual persons are thus, at times, seriously deluded by thinking they are filled with devotion because of their satisfaction in the use of these holy objects. Yet perhaps this devotion will be no more than a natural inclination and appetite that is centred on these holy things, as it would be on any other object. 2. Hence, to begin our discussion on the subject of oratories, some individuals never grow tired of adding images of one kind or another to their oratories, or of taking delight in their arrangement and adornment of these images, so the place of prayer will appear well decorated and attractive. But they do not love God more when it is arranged in this way instead of that. Rather, they love him less, since the delight they find in these ornate paintings withdraws their attention from the living person represented, as we pointed out. It is true, indeed, that every decoration, adornment, and reverence that can be given to images is very small. Therefore, those who show little respect or reverence for their statues deserve sharp reproof, as well as those who carve so inexpertly that the finished statue subtracts from devotion rather than adding to it. Some artisans so unskilled and unpolished in the art of carving should be forbidden to continue their craft. Still, what has this to do with the possessiveness, attachment, and appetite you have in these exterior devotions and adornments that so engross the senses that your heart is impeded from turning to God, loving him, and forgetting all things out of love for him? If you fail in this love because of these other objects, he will not merely fail to reward you, but will punish you for not having sought his pleasure in all things instead of your own. We get a clear understanding of this in the festivity that was celebrated in honour of His Majesty when he entered Jerusalem. While they were expressing thanks to him with songs and palm branches, he was weeping because he knew that despite those exterior signs and decorations, their hearts were far from him. Luke 19:35-44. Evidently they were celebrating themselves more than God, which often happens today when there is a solemn festival in some locality. Many are usually happier because of the recreation derived from the celebration, by seeing or by being seen, or by eating, or by some other means, than because of God's pleasure. In these inclinations and intentions they do not please God. This is especially so with those who, in organising the religious festivals, invent ridiculous and undevout things to incite laughter among the people, which only adds to the distraction. Others design displays meant to please the people more than to arouse their devotion. 3. What shall I say about the desires for personal profit of some of those who organise these festivals? If they have more concern and covetousness for this than for the service of God, they are well aware of the fact, but so is God who sees them. Yet if the right intention is lacking, whatever kind of celebration they may put on, they are having a festival for themselves rather than for God. God does not record for their merit what they do for their own pleasure or for that of others. On the contrary, many taking part in festivals in honour of God will be only diverting themselves, and God will be angry with them. He was angry in this way with the children of Israel when he killed many thousands of them while they were celebrating a festival, singing and dancing to their idol, thinking their festivity was in honour of God. Exodus 32:7-28. God also killed the priests Nadab and Abihu, children of Aaron, while they still held the censers in their hands, because they offered strange fire. Leviticus 10:1-2. And the one who came to the wedding feast badly dressed and without the wedding garment was commanded by the king to be bound hand and foot and cast into the exterior darkness. Mark 22:12-13. We learn from these instances how intolerable to God these irreverences are in gatherings organised for his service. How many festivals, my God, do the children of this earth celebrate in your honour, in which the devil has a greater role than you? And the devil, like a merchant, is pleased with these gatherings, because he does more business on those days. How many times will you say of them, this people honours me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me, because they serve me without cause. Matthew 15:8-9. God must be served because of who he is. and other motives must not be intermingled with this one. Not serving God only because of who he is the same as serving God without having God as the final cause. 4. Returning then to the subject of oratories. I say that some persons decorate them more for their own pleasure than for God's pleasure. Some pay so little attention to the devotional aspects of their oratories that they have no more regard for them than they do for their profane dressing rooms. Some do not even have this much interest in them, since they find more gratification in profane things than in divine. 5. Let us turn our discussion rather to more spiritual persons, those who are considered devout. Many of them in their desire and gratification grow so attached to their oratory and its decoration that all their energy, which should be employed in prayer and interior recollection, is expended on these things. They do not realise that by not arranging their oratory in a way that would further interior recollection and peace of soul, they receive as much distraction as they would from other things, and at every step they become disquieted over this satisfaction, and even more so if anyone wants to take it away from them. Chapter 39. How a person should use oratories and churches, directing the Spirit to God through them. 1. To direct the Spirit to God in this kind of good, we should keep in mind that for beginners it is permissible and even fitting to find some sensible gratification and satisfaction in the use of images, oratories, and other visible objects of devotion. With this delight they are assisted in renouncing worldly things, from whose taste they are not yet weaned or detached. This is what we do with a child when we desire to take something away from it. We give it another thing to play with, so it will not begin to cry when left empty-handed. But in order to advance, spiritual persons should divest themselves also of all these satisfactions and appetites, for the pure spirit is bound to none of these objects, but turns only to interior recollection and mental communion with God. Although they derive profit from images and oratories, this is very transitory, for their spirits immediately elevated to God in forgetfulness of all sensory objects. 2. Even though it is better to pray in a place that is more respectable, one should, in spite of this, choose the place that hinders least the elevation of sense and spirit to God. This is the interpretation we should give to Christ's reply to the query of the Samaritan woman about the place best suited for prayer, the temple or the mountains. His answer was that true prayer is annexed neither to the temple nor to the mountain, but that the adorers who please the Father are those who adore him in spirit and in truth. John 4:20-24. Churches and quiet places are dedicated and suitable for prayer, for the church should be used for no other purpose. Nevertheless, in a matter of communion with God as interior as this, the place should be chosen that least occupies and attracts the senses. Spiritual persons should not look for a spot pleasant and delightful to the senses, as some usually do, lest they become absorbed in the recreation, gratification, and delight of the senses, rather than in God, in spiritual recollection. A solitary and austere location is beneficial for the sure and direct ascent of the spirit to God, without the impediment or determinant caused by visible things. Sometimes visible objects do aid in the elevation of the spirit, but this elevation is the result of immediately forgetting them in order to remain recollected in God. To give us an example, our Saviour chose for his prayer solitary places, those that raised the soul to God and were undistracting to the senses, such as mountains that are elevated above the earth, and usually barren of objects that would provide recreations for the senses. Matthew 14:23. 3. Persons who are truly spiritual never consider or become attached to the particular comfort of a place of prayer, for this would result from attachment to the senses. Their interest is interior recollection in the forgetfulness of other things. They choose the site that is freest of sensible objects and satisfactions, and turn their attention from all these considerations, so that, unimpeded by any creature, they may rejoice more in solitude with God. Some spiritual persons noticeably spend all their time in adorning oratories and making places agreeable to their own temperament or inclination, and pay little heed to interior recollection, which is the important factor. They are not very recollected, for if they were, they would be unable to find any satisfaction in these ways, but would grow tired of them. Chapter 40 continues directing the spirit in this matter toward interior recollection. 1. The reason some spiritual persons never entirely enter into the true joys of the spirit is that they never manage to renounce their desire for joy in these exterior and visible things. These persons should keep in mind that although the place dedicated and suited to prayer is the visible oratory or church, and the motivating good is the image, these means should not be so used that the satisfaction and delight of the soul stems entirely from them, thereby causing one to forget to pray in the living temple, which is interior recollection of soul. To remind us of this, the Apostle said, "Behold, your bodies are living temples of the Holy Spirit, who dwells within you." 1 Corinthians 3:16. The thought brings to mind the affirmation of Christ that we quoted. The true adorners should... adorers. The true adorers should adore in spirit and truth. John 4:24. God pays little attention to your oratories and places arranged for prayer, if through your desire and the delight you take in them you become attached and in consequence have less interior nakedness, that is spiritual poverty, in the renunciation of things that can be possessed. 2. To purge the will of its desire and vain joy in these objects and direct it to God, you should strive in your prayer for a pure conscience, a will that is wholly with God, and a mind truly set on Him. And, as I mentioned, you ought to choose the most withdrawn and solitary place possible, convert all your joy of will into glorifying and invoking God, and you should pay no attention to these other little exterior satisfactions. You should rather seek to deny them. Should a soul become bound to the delight of sensory devotion, it will never succeed in passing on to the strength of spiritual delight, which is discovered through interior recollection in spiritual nakedness. Chapter 41. Some harm resulting from surrender to sensible gratification in the use of devotional objects and places. 1. Spiritual persons incur many kinds of interior and exterior harm by their desire to get sensible delight from the use of devotional objects. As for interior harm, one will never reach inward recollection of spirit, which consists in passing beyond all these sensory delights, making the soul forget them, entering into the living temple of spiritual recollection, and acquiring solid virtue. With regard to exterior harm, individuals will be rendered incapable of praying everywhere. They will be able to pray only in those places suited to their taste, and thus be frequently wanting in prayer. As the saying goes, the only book he knows is his own village. 2. Moreover, the appetites of these individuals will be the occasion of considerable instability. Some never persevere in one place, nor even at times in one state, but now you see them in one spot, now in another, now choosing one hermitage, now another, now decorating one oratory, and now another. Some also pass their time here below, changing states and modes of life. The favour and joy they find in their spiritual practices is merely sensible, and they have never made any effort to reach spiritual recollection through denial of their wills and submission to suffering discomforts. Consequently, as often as they see a seemingly devotional place, or way, or state of life that fits their disposition and inclination, they immediately leave what they have and follow after it. And since they are motivated by sensible gratification, they soon begin to look for something else, for sensible satisfaction is inconstant and quickly fails. I'm going to stop there because it's a good place to stop. There's only a little bit of the book left anyway. Like, I'm on page 342 now. And it ends on 349, so I'll read the rest of it tomorrow. There's plenty more in this, though. Oh, I'm tired, I don't know why. I've just started another dry fast. Like, I mean, it's not affecting me in the slightest because I wouldn't have even had another drink yet after my breakfast. So, yeah, so I'm going to try for another 24 hours, maybe 36. I think I shall probably just go for 24. But what time did I finish eating? About 1 o'clock. I finished my drink, I mean. So, 24 hours till about 1:30 tomorrow. So that's 36 until about 1:30 in the morning. But I don't know if I'll go that long, we'll see how it goes. It had a really good effect on me last time, you said. It's very intense. So I was doing some more research on dry fasting. I haven't even plugged my microphone in. Shall I do it now? And apparently, it's very good for ridding the body of pathogens, like microorganisms and also parasites. Because the way that the body produces water is that in every cell it burns fat to produce metabolic water. And the body can produce itself, providing it's got a fat reserve, about 1 litre of water every day. But the water only feeds the cells of the body. It doesn't feed pathogens. So if you're drinking water into your stomach and then it goes into your guts, you're feeding pathogenic bacteria and other microorganisms and also any parasites that you may have in your system. But the metabolic water doesn't do that. So it kills every bad thing that you've got attached to your body. Maybe not on the outside if you continue washing your hands. But then you'd also continue to sweat as well if you were hot. So, probably more difficult to eliminate them from skin. And then also your body, because it's been deprived of food, goes into autophagy, self-eating. So it removes damaged tissue. And it builds up muscle as well because it thinks that you need to be going out finding food and water. So it doesn't break down muscle. It also increases your mental clarity. I actually found dry fasting somewhat easier than water fasting because drinking water makes me hungry, whereas I didn't feel any hunger at all. I felt a little bit thirsty and my mouth was dry when I was dry fasting. Since it's quite a new thing for me again, since it's quite a new thing for me, I thought I'd try it again. Because also I was quite anxious about it last time because I've never done it before. But I'm not anxious now because I knew I was perfectly fine. And in fact, drinking water afterwards didn't even make me feel any better. So I'm not even bothered. 24 hours is a really short time anyway. I'm quite used to water fasting for well over 24 hours. So it don't worry me. Apparently they didn't know until 2016 why people who were dry fasting were still completely hydrated and passing urine every day. After a long period of time, I mean like a week, They didn't know where the water was coming from. So they had to do a lot of experiments, and then they found out it's metabolic water. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.